Hello there, and welcome to this webinar on the Design Cluster booklet for your Cert 4 TAE 40116 with Success Training Academy. It is my pleasure and honour to welcome you along to this webinar. Essentially, this webinar is going to give you the skills and knowledge to be able to handle the short answer questions. I'll say it again, the short answer questions in this booklet. Now, this booklet forms part of your TAE program, and in essence, you're going to have probably about 3 or 4 booklets that you'll be working through. And the purpose of this webinar is to give you enough perspective and knowledge to be able to answer the short answer questions and also essentially understand where to find the answers as well. In this webinar, I'm not going to give you the answers. However, I am going to give you some perspective on the questions so that you'll know how to best approach them in your research. Okay, so we've got the Design Cluster booklet, and it is broken down into short answer questions and also some projects. In this webinar, I'm only going to go through the short answer questions, and in a separate webinar, I'll be going through the projects step by step for you. Okay. Now, I imagine that you probably received the booklet either electronically or you've come to one of Success Training Academy's face-to-face courses, and you are watching through this webinar to help you complete the booklet itself. So first thing that we want to do is that we definitely want to get access to the textbook itself. We want to get access to the textbook. So I recommend that you head off to the RAM Training Services website and you head into student login, and then you're going to find that the username is admin and the password is admin. Okay. Then you're going to head to the resource section. And then you're going to click on the textbook part 1, okay, textbook part 1, and that's going to give you an electronic copy of the textbook itself, okay. Now, if you come to class, you will also get a copy of the textbook, a hard copy as well, okay. If you're doing the course via distance, you'll just get an electronic copy, and you'll be fine either way, okay. So I'll just go through that again. Head to the ramtrainingservices.com.au website. It's just a company that Success Training Academy are affiliated with in terms of resources. Okay, so you go to student admin and you type in admin, admin for the username and admin for the password, and you download part 1. And that's going to look like this. And there's about 217 pages, so you feel free not to print it. See how you go. All right. And how much you access the textbook is totally up to you. As I go through the short answer questions, I will also give you indications of things that you can Google that will probably provide you with the answers as well. Okay. So let's get straight to it. So the first part that we need to fill out is your name. So let's go with that. So put in your first name and last name. Note that we want you to fill it out in black pen or blue pen only. So you can print this off and fill it out handwritten, or you can fill it out electronically and type in your answers as well. Okay, and the projects, though, you may find that it's better to handwrite those projects when you come along to a face-to-face workshop. Okay, so let's get into it. All right, so we're going to scroll down and we're going to take a look at the instructions. You can read through that in your own time. Okay, so I'm going to come down a bit further, and now let's take a look. Learner to complete this section, so put in your name, okay, sign it and put the date, all right. This is going to be a date that's probably going to be very close to your enrollment date, okay. This section you can leave blank. This section you can put in your name, your start date, put that in. Finish date you can leave that blank, and all the rest of the information here you can leave that blank, okay. And you want to put in your learner name again, you can leave this section blank, okay? So coming down, we got some explanations about the assessment. All right, and now we hit the short answer questions. And again, I can't really give you the answers. However, I'm going to walk you through some perspective on how to answer the questions. So the first question here is, all training programs must be based on formal training packages, true or false. Okay, now the key word to notice here is all training programs must be based on formal training packages. Okay, I would have to say that if a training program is part of the vet sector and it is from a training package, then yes, it's going to be based on a training package. But training programs as such can be a wide variety of different things, and it could be, in-house training in the workplace. It could be ad hoc training with apprentices and all those different kinds of things. So you may find that your answer may head towards this area here. Just a hint, nudge on that one, okay? Question 2, but if you want to find out more information about that, the textbook, start reading through the first couple of chapters, okay? Now, question 2, each of the following would be considered a benchmark. Let's place a tick beside those that would be considered benchmarks for nationally accredited training and assessment. So what we need to think about is what would be benchmarks for nationally accredited training. So qualification descriptions, yeah, probably they would be. Assessment plans, definitely, yeah. Licensing requirements, yeah, probably. Units of competency, yeah, probably. Now, here's the difference. Standard operating procedures and work instructions. Let me ask you, are they nationally accredited? Okay. Assessment instruments or tools? Yeah, probably, because they're going to be based on nationally accredited training. Okay. Evidence requirements? Yeah, probably. Organizations, policies, and workplace procedures? Well, yes, but they are going to be specific to particular workplaces. Okay, work health and safety legislation, codes of practice, standards and guidelines. Yeah, I'd say that they are national benchmarks that we all need to adhere to. Course outlines, yeah, probably. Okay. Now, question 3. List 2 workplace standards that could be used as benchmarks for training. Okay, so I'd like you to think about your workplace and think about what are some standards that you must adhere to that could become benchmarks for training. So you may have customer service standards, you may have WHS standards, you may have standards for how things are cooked, you may have standards for, let's see, SOPs, you may have standards for how vehicles are checked, all those different kind of standards that could appear in your workplace. Okay, so just have a think about in your industry, what would be the most appropriate standards that you need to work to. Okay, so question 4, explain the difference between an accredited course and a training package. So what I suggest that you do is head to Google and type in accredited course and see what the definition is. Go to Google and type in training package and start to notice and identify what the differences could be. What I also encourage you to do is head to the textbook and read through and find the words accredited course. I will just, as an aside, give you a bit of information right now that an accredited course is generally something that an organization will write and put together, and then they are going to send it off for it to be nationally endorsed. But the most important thing that we remember is that accredited course is the intellectual property of the designer and developer. It will be nationally recognized, but the IP cannot actually be accessed by anyone from the public, and you can only go through the course if you actually so you can only access the materials if you go through the course as a student yourself. Okay, so a training package, on the other hand, is nationally recognized, and they are national units of competency and qualifications, and anybody can access that material. Okay. So I hope that's made a bit more sense for you. Definitely go to Google and type in accredited course, okay, and training package, and grab those differences, okay. Now, of course, as you go through this textbook, go through this workbook, if you need more space, then you obviously put in the cursor and push enter, 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 and that'll give you more space for the boxes. Question 5, complete the table below to show the 3 components of a nationally accredited training package and the purpose of each. Okay, so the first component is probably going to be the units of competency. Okay, so you definitely want to go to Google, type in units of competency, and find out what's their purpose. Okay, next one is the qualification document. Okay, check out the qualification document and find out the purpose for that. Okay, and the other one that you could look at might be we've got the units of competency, we've got the qualification, and then we've got the user's guide, okay? And we have a user's guide for every single training package. Another item that you could put in here could be the assessment requirements, okay? And I highly encourage you, go to Google, type in units of competency and see what comes up. You can also check out the textbook, units of competency, qualification document, and next one you could have a look at the user's guide, okay, and see what comes up. All right, so just grab those definitions, read a little bit about each of those on Google. Okay, question 6, list 5 of the principles of adult learning as mentioned by Malcolm Knowles. Okay, what I suggest, go to Google, type in Knowles and principles adult learning and see what comes up. Okay, ultimately, the principles of adult learning from Malcolm Knowles, you're going to find that if you go to a lot of websites, it's specifically going to mention the principles. Okay, so it's just going to list them 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But what I do encourage you to do is after you've listed them, put in an example or explain them a little bit. Okay, don't just list them. Okay, and one of them could be around motivation, okay? One of them could be around relevance for learning, those kind of things, all right, okay. So question 7, list 4 of the 5 principles of instructional design. Now, there are many, many, many principles of instructional design. All we're looking for you to do is just list 4 of them, okay? So these could be things around that the information must be presented in a logical flow, it must be sequenced, it must be easy on the eyes, all those different kind of things. So for the principles of instructional design, there is a range of answers that you could provide, but we're just looking for 4 of the 5 principles of instructional design. Question 8, suggest one action a trainer might take to ensure resources are available within the required time frame. So let me translate the question for you. Hypothetically, if you had a workshop on that you needed to deliver in 2 days' time, how would you ensure that you had the resources available? Would you send the documents to the secretary to get them printed a day before? Would you photocopy extra copies just in case? Would you make sure that the equipment was all set up and you would do that in the appropriate time frame? Just think about your industry. And if you were running a workshop, how would you ensure that any resources you needed for that workshop were going to be available in the appropriate time frame? Okay, so definitely put in a couple of examples for your training world. Okay, question 9. List 3 questions a trainer should ask when developing new learning activities. Now, these questions are questions that you probably ask yourself. So questions such as, number 1 could be, is it safe? Okay, that's a great question to ask. All right. Number 2 could be, what's the learning outcome? You know, another one could be, how do I want people to feel as they go through the activities? Another one could be, what resources do I need for these activities? Another one could be, how long will these activities take? Another one could be, who else needs to be involved when we do these activities? Okay, so those are some great questions that you could ask yourself, and maybe you want to put in some questions that you need to ask other people as you are developing these activities as well. Okay, so we're just looking for 3. Question 10. Complete the table below to show the 3 delivery modes and/or methods and advantages, disadvantages of each. So, delivery method, it could be face-to-face. It could be online. It could be distance. And you could break it down further. You could even say face-to-face and maybe webinars. Okay, so different ways that you could deliver information. So let's just do one, and then you can do the rest by yourself. So we got face-to-face. Well, an advantage of that could be on-the-spot feedback. Disadvantage is that people need to commit to time, and there is less flexibility. Okay, so now go ahead and have a think about online and distance, and the advantages and disadvantages of each of those. Okay. So just to give a distinction, the difference between online and distance would be that online, you would actually be logging into modules, and you would be, I guess, watching things happen in real time. Distance would be more so you're provided with the workbooks, provided with the resources, and you work through it at your own pace, and there's a little bit less support. Okay, and a little bit less interactivity, if that makes sense. Okay, question 11. List 3 legislative policies that could affect training and assessment and give 1 reason why. Okay, so just to give you an example, but I will encourage you to Google legislation, training, or training legislation. So let me give you an example. A policy could be WHS. Okay, now reason could be we want to make sure our learners are safe as they go through their learning experience, and we all have a duty of care, for example. Okay, another policy could be anti-discrimination. Okay, put in a reason, maybe an example for that. Another one could be, let's see, anti-bullying. Okay, put in a reason, put an example. Another one could be privacy and confidentiality. Okay, and another one could be, what else have we got? Let's go with working with children. Okay, that's a very important policy that we need to adhere to, like the blue card. Okay, so just think about any policies and procedures that could particularly impact your training within your workplace in terms of legislative policies. Okay, and if you want further information about this, check out the textbook and look for the keywords of legislative policies or laws that impact training. Okay. Question 12, list pieces of OHS knowledge a trainer should have and apply to all learning environments. Okay, now question 12 could be a little bit ambiguous here because we've said list pieces of OHS knowledge. So just some guidance, you probably want to put in about 4 or 5 just to answer the question in full detail. So I want you to think about, what should a trainer know about and do before, during, and after a session. So probably some of the things could be about how do you operate the equipment safely. It could be things like inspecting the room and identifying hazards and what you should do about those hazards. And it could be things like evacuation procedures. It could be things like first aid. All those different things, okay? So just have a think about all the different aspects of safety that could impact your training, and go ahead and add in maybe 4 or 5 things that a trainer should definitely know about. Okay, coming down. Question 13, explain the purpose of the AQF. Okay, the purpose of the AQF. what I recommend is that you Google AQF and see what comes up. I will tell you now, though, that it stands for the Australian Qualifications Framework. The Australian Qualifications Framework. And essentially, the simplest way to think about it is that it's the levels. It's the levels of education that someone can go through in Australia. So, for example, certificate 1, 2, 3, 4, diploma, and above. Okay. So I highly recommend that you Google AQF and just read the description and then put in your interpretation of what the purpose of the AQF might be. Okay. What does the acronym AISC stand for? Okay, it's another moment where you can go straight to Google and type in AISC. However, I'll give you a hint. You're looking for you're looking for an organization that might, how do I put this, support things called SSOs or service skills organizations. Okay. Essentially, AISC, without giving it away, so Google AISC, see what comes up. B, explain the organization's purpose. Just to give you some background about VET, as you would be aware, vocational education training, the purpose of it is to get someone ready for the workplace. Ultimately, training packages are based on industry needs. There are organizations called service skills organizations that write training packages. They write training packages. So service skills organizations write training packages. And they do research into industry to find out what the industry needs might be. Okay? And they put all their training packages together and they submit them to a particular organization. Okay, and that particular organization will approve or make recommendations for the modifications of the training packages. Okay, so head to Google and type in AISC and see what comes up. Okay, but essentially there's organizations that write training packages. But naturally, those training packages need to be approved before they're released to the public. Okay? So, question 15. Name the 4 dimensions of competency. Okay? This one's a really easy Google search. Just go straight to Google and type in dimensions of competency, and you're going to find that it's the first or the second result that comes up. Okay? And essentially, dimensions of competency, a way to think about it is, how would you know that somebody is competent or not? And how would you know that they could do the job that we are assessing them on? So, for example, let's say driving a forklift. Okay, so with competency, it's not just about them doing it once, it's about them meeting the criteria of dimensions of competency. And it's, can they do it? Can they do it in multiple locations and different environments? Can they handle it when things go wrong? And can they do it while doing other things as well and while navigating simultaneous challenges, I guess is the best way to think about that. Okay, so dimensions of competency, I can't give them to you, but just Google the 4 of them and then think about an example that you could put in as well. Okay, if you get stuck on an example, just keep Googling and you will find quite a few blog sites and few websites that's going to give you a few working examples of dimensions of competency. Question 16. What information do each of the following sections contain in an accredited course template? Now, for this question, you are going to definitely need to Google accredited course template. You're going to have to Google accredited course template, and you're going to find that it's the first or the second one that comes up. And you're going to need to read through that template document, and you'll find the sections that are mapped out quite easily, okay? So definitely go to Google and type in accredited course template, and I believe it's a document that has been released by ASQA, Australian Skills Quality Authority, but you're going to find that document, I believe it's a PDF, and section A, B, and C, okay? If you get stuck on that, just ask your trainer when you see them. Okay, question 17. Explain the structure and format of a unit of competency. So within a unit of competency, when you go to the website training.gov.au, and let's see if we can do that right now. So I've gone training.gov.au, and I'm going to click on National Vet Regulator. I'm going to untick that. I'm going to go to one of my favorite units of all time, BSB ADM 405. I'm going to organize meetings. So let's take a look at the structure and components of a unit of competency. So we've got the code up here. We've got the title. We've got BSB ADM 405, organize meetings. All right, if we come down, we've got the elements and performance criteria, okay? So the elements are the steps to do the task. Now the task in this case is organize a meeting. And on this side, we've got performance criteria, and these are essentially how the task needs to be done or the expectations on the task. All right, so to answer the question, structure and component, so we've got elements, which is the steps to complete the task. Performance criteria is how the task should be completed. We come down, we've got the foundation skills, and these are essentially survival skills or basic fundamental skills that somebody would need to have in order to be able to do these things. Then we're going to come down, and then in terms of assessments, we've got the performance evidence and knowledge evidence. Okay, performance evidence are things that people must be able to be seen to do. Okay, and are typically done through observing someone do it. We've got the knowledge evidence, which is a theoretical knowledge that somebody must have in order to be able to complete the tasks. And we've got assessment conditions. And assessment conditions are the conditions and environments under which somebody must be assessed. And they will also list the requirements for an assessor and the levels of competency an assessor may have, their background as well. Okay, so to sum up, we've got the elements, we've got performance criteria, we've got foundation skills, and we've got performance evidence, knowledge evidence, and assessment conditions. Okay, so those will be the critical components of a unit of competency. So you want to go ahead and explain each of those. Okay, now explain what is meant by the following terms: qualification prerequisite, pathway, standard, assessment tool, assessment. Okay, so qualification prerequisite, without giving away the answer, essentially whenever you see the word prerequisite, just think about what needs to be done before starting the next course. Okay, so for example, before you do a diploma of WHS, you need to do a Cert 4 in WHS. Okay, that's a prerequisite. Before you maybe do a Cert 2 in something, maybe you need to do a Cert 1 in something, okay? So just have a think about what are some examples that you know about that could have prerequisites, okay? Qualification pathway. Now in this case, this is something that must be done before something else, okay? Qualification pathway is the future. So for example, what would be the qualification pathway after a Cert 4 in TAE? Well, you could do a diploma in TAE or a diploma in vocational education training. A Cert 3 pathway after a Cert 3 could be a Cert 4. So simplest definition of qualification pathway is what is the next possible qualification after the one currently being studied. Competency standard, well, another word for competency standard is simply the unit of competency that's being undertaken. a unit of competency that's being undertaken. Okay, and that can also relate to standards within the workplace. Okay, so I do recommend that you go to Google and type in competency standard in VET and see what comes up. Okay, an assessment tool. Excuse me for a moment. An assessment tool is essentially the documents that somebody would go through in order to, how do I put this, complete the assessment tasks for a unit of competency. So an assessment tool could be something like the booklet that contains the written test, the observation, the policies and procedures, the entire booklet that would make up the assessment for a particular unit of competency. Okay, and I definitely recommend you go to Google and type in the keyword of assessment tool. You're also going to find that in the textbook as well. Okay, an assessment. Now, an assessment could be the individual assessment items, such as a practical task, such as a written test, such as a verbal interview, list of questions. An assessment could also be a role play. Okay, so an assessment is the minor items that make up the assessment tool. All right, question 19. When putting together the units for a formal qualification, you are allowed to use whichever combination of core and elective units you wish, true or false. Okay. Now, without giving it away, there's things called packaging rules. Okay, packaging rules. And these are essentially the rules by which you must choose the core and elective units. Okay, so for example, in the Cert 4 TAE, there are 9 core units and 1 elective. I'll say it again. There's 9 core units in the TAE and 1 elective. So logic would tell us that we would need to follow those rules, and if we didn't, then probably we are not going to be giving the student the qualification based on the appropriate packaging rules. Okay, so typically what you're going to find is an RTO will look at the core and elective, and they are absolutely going to fulfill all the core units, and the elective units they are going to pick based on the needs, wants, desires of their learning group. But can they pick any electives at all from any training package? Absolutely not. They need to follow the guidelines of the packaging rules. Okay, so I definitely recommend that you check out Google, type in packaging rules and see what happens. All right. Question 20. What do the following acronyms stand for? All right, so I'm not really going to give you the answers for these apart from TGA. I'll just give you some further clarification around that. If you Google TGA, you'll end up with some interesting ones. But TGA is just an abbreviation for training.gov.au. So the answer for this is www.training.gov.au. That is literally the answer. Okay. So www.training.gov.au. TGA is an abbreviation for the website itself. Okay, so now AQF, Google it. NCVR, Google it. RTO, I hope by this point you would know RTO and what that stands for. SSO, definitely Google that. ASQA, Google that. All right. Question 21. List one component of a training package that can be contextualized. So the key word there is contextualized, and that means basically made relevant to an audience. Okay, so when you look for a unit of competency, there are things that can be contextualized and things that cannot be contextualized. So have a read through the textbook and see, look out for the word contextualization or contextualized. And maybe even go to Google and type in training package contextualization and see what comes up. because we need to understand what can be contextualized and what cannot be contextualized. Okay. So, question 23. List and explain the 3 endorsed components of a nationally training package. List, refer to the following websites for the great. Yep, awesome. So, the 3 endorsed components. All right. So, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. You're going to find the units of competency. You're going to find the AQF or the qualification document. You're going to find the assessment guidelines. Okay, so there's 3 of them for you there. You've got units of competency, you've got the qualification document, and then you've got assessment requirements. Okay, so question 24. Oh, if you want to Google it, you can just type in endorsed components national training package. Okay, question 24. List 3 sources of information relating to training packages. Okay, so for this one, let's rewind for a little bit and let's think about who writes training packages. As we've talked about, service skills organizations write training packages. So number 1 could be SSOs, so service skills organizations. Obviously, they are going to have information about the training packages. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. What is the website that contains all the data around training packages? Obviously, training.gov.au. Okay, that website that we looked at just previously. This website up here. Okay, this website here. Cool. And yep, this one here. And third of all, another place you could go to would be AISC, so Australian Industry Skills Committee. Another one could be ASQA. Okay, all of those are going to have information relating to training packages. Question 25. Which organization manages the development and modifications of training packages? Well, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. If you haven't already guessed, it's probably going to be the AISC, Australian Industry Skills Committee. So just write in a little bit of a description about what that organization is and what they do. All right. Question 26. Name the body that holds final responsibility for the development of training packages. Okay. So this one, question 25, could also be answered by SSOs. And to make it even more relevant, you may want to put in the SSO that handles a training package that's relevant for your industry. That would be a bonus answer. Name the body that holds final responsibility for the development of the training packages. Well, we're going to probably assume that's going to be AISC again. Okay. Question 27. Name the body responsible for approving accredited courses. Okay. It's a bit of a trick question. This one, you're actually going to find the answer is going to be ASQA, Australian Skills Quality Authority. Okay. Now, that's not really an answer that's easily found. However, you would find that through reading through the textbook and finding the keywords of accredited course. Okay. Question 28. Explain the relationship between licensing requirements and the vet sector. So the key way to think about this is what licenses could be required to perform a job, and also what qualifications could be required for that job as well. So for example, if you want to work in childcare, well, you need the Cert 3 in childcare. You also need the blue card. Okay. So if you want to work on a construction site, well, you're probably going to need the blue card. Oh, sorry, the white card. You're probably also going to need maybe a Cert 2 in plumbing or Cert 2 in construction, whatever it might be. Let's take a look at security. If you are working in the security field, you're going to need a security license, and you're probably going to need the Cert 2, Cert 3 in security as well. Okay, so there's a couple of examples. So I guess the answer to the question would be without an appropriate license, you cannot work in a particular industry, and often qualifications are required as well. Okay, question 29. Explain the role of a prerequisite in a qualification. As we've already talked about, a prerequisite is a qualification that must be done prior to doing another qualification. Okay, so probably a prerequisite is going to set people up with the skills and knowledge to be able to start the next course, if that makes sense. All right. So you want to put in an example of a prerequisite and why it may be required before they start another one. Okay, question 30. Refer to the implementation guide for the BSB training package and state one condition with which an RTO must comply when contextualizing a unit. Okay, so just have a think about that word contextualization and think about earlier we asked the question, what can be contextualized and what cannot, and just do a little bit more further research into that area of what's appropriate to be contextualized and what can you not. Okay, so hint, hint, nudge, nudge, you can't change the wording of the actual unit of competency for the performance criteria. Okay, it's a bit of a hint there on that one. Question 31. Read the assessment guidance in the TAE and list 3 points an assessor must be aware of if they were to assess a candidate. So if you are going to be an assessor, well, here's some things to remember. Number 1, you must have the TAE. You must have the TAE that you, if you are training and assessing someone in the vet sector. Number 2, you must have relevant industry experience. Okay. And the third one is that you must have the qualification that you are assessing someone on. So if you're assessing someone on the Cert 3 in childcare, well then you must actually have that qualification itself. Okay. Question 32. Okay. Mandy is keen to undertake some training in vet compliance. She conducted a search on train.gov.au and found these 2 courses are available. She's keen to know what the courses consist of, but has found that they are accredited courses and the content is unavailable. Okay. It says record the details of the course contact person. Okay. Now you may or may not be able to see the screen very well, but essentially the code is 10609 NAT. So what we're going to ask you to do is go to training.gov.au and put in the code 10609 NAT, and when you click on that, it's going to bring up the contact details for the person that devised that course. Another way to go into it would be to put into Google, Cert 4 in vocational education and training compliance. Okay, and if you hit enter in Google, it's going to give the result to you as well. So we've also got another thing I may be able to do. Yes, I can. Oh, very fancy me. So just zooming in here. So we've got 10609 NAT. If you literally put that into Google, it's going to come up, okay? 10610 NAT. So if you just put those codes into Google, push enter, then you're going to have the contact details. And all we need you to do is write down the name of the person and their phone number and email, okay? So scrolling down, let me just unzoom that a bit. All right, cool. So you're going to put in the name and contact details of the person. Now, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, it's probably the same person, okay? Now, David is an automotive engineer and is keen to find out what courses are available for an apprentice he has recently hired or engaged. Research training.gov.au and recommend 2 courses, qualifications that could be considered suitable for the apprentice, okay? So David, now, he wants to go, probably what we're going to do is we're going to go to train.gov.au. We're going to type in some keywords here. And we're going to unclick that. And we may put in, let's say, The key words are maybe vehicle, maybe let's see, mechanical, maybe what else? Car, maybe what else have we got? Automotive. We want to put in the keywords of automotive and see what comes up. Okay, so you're going to put in the keyword automotive, push search, and it's going to come up with a list of qualifications. So you could put in Cert 1, Cert 2, Cert 3, but put in the name of the qualification that could be considered appropriate for somebody working in the automotive field. There is no right or wrong answer on this. We're just looking for you to put in 2 qualifications. Question 33. In 2 to 3 sentences, explain your understanding of the term reasonable adjustment in VET. So we're asking you to go to Google and type in reasonable adjustment in VET and see what comes up. Okay, and ultimately, just some background information. Somebody comes to you and maybe they've got reading and writing challenges. Maybe it would be a little bit unfair to give them a written test. So essentially, reasonable adjustment would be asking you, how could you make the assessment even more fair so that anybody could get through the assessment and complete it in a way that nobody is discriminated against. Okay. Now, B is give 2 reasons why reasonable adjustments are made in VET. Okay. So if you go to Google and type in reasonable adjustment, you're going to find some obvious reasons why it would be made in VET. Okay. Give 2 examples of occasions where reasonable adjustment may be made. So have a think about some different situations where reasonable adjustment may be required. And there's numerous examples, like people that are in wheelchairs, people can't read or write, people that got visual impairment, people that have got hearing issues, people that live in remote locations, all those different kind of things, okay? So have a think about some examples of that, and also what could be done to make sure that people still can perform the assessment as required. Okay. So question 34, list 2 VET policies that could impact on the way training and assessment is conducted. So VET policies could be things like the opportunity for reassessment. It could be the right of appeal. It could be the standards for RTO operations. Okay, it could be making sure that students present authentic evidence, that they can be proven to be their own evidence or their own work. Okay, what else? We have duty of care. Okay. All these different policies. So you may even Google VET policies and see what comes up. Okay. Now, next one. You're about to prepare the training program for a candidate and have just visited training.gov.au and found that the qualification has changed from BSB 40507 to BSB 40515. Compare the 2 qualifications and list 3 changes in the new qualification. So you can go to training.gov.au, put in this code, see what it's like, put in this code, see what it's like, okay? Now, probably just to give you some hints, well, things that you may notice that are different are maybe number 1, the names of units have changed, maybe the codes of units have changed. Maybe the structure of units has changed. Maybe the number of units has changed. Maybe, let's see, what else could have changed? The assessment requirements have changed, and maybe the assessor requirements have changed. Okay, so just have a think about the differences between these two and do a little bit of research around that. Okay. List 3 benefits to the organisation or concerned when work is conducted in accordance with the organisation's quality assurance policy. There are many stakeholders involved in VET, and ultimately we want to make sure that everybody's happy. And we want to make sure that customers are happy, i.e. students. We want to make sure that they are delivered a product that is quality assured, that is consistent, that is reliable. So we've got some outcomes that we would create for students and for learners here. So have a think about what's the benefit of students getting a good quality product. Next, have a think about compliance. What are some benefits of delivering a compliant product? Okay. And third of all, think about the staff, the trainers, think about the admin team and all of that. So have a think about how having a quality assured system could be a good thing for these 3 areas. So for students, for staff, and also for compliance. Okay, so I'm trying not to give away the answer on that, but just have a think about how having a good quality system is going to be good for each of these. Okay, so that, folks, is essentially the end of the short answer questions. And now all we ask you is just sign this section here and pop the date. Okay, so after that, we have the practical assessments and the projects, okay? But for now, that is the short answer questions. Please remember that we are expecting you to answer the questions in good quality length. So for a Cert 4, we are expecting sentences for your answers. Make sure that if you are answering it electronically, that's great. Keep saving your answers, and you're able to print off your answers and submit them with your projects. That's great, okay? If you have any problems at all with any of the projects as you go through the booklet, don't hesitate to give the office a call and they can give you further clarification. However, please be flexible with your research skills and see what comes up in Google. Definitely have a read through the textbook, but you don't have to read every single page, every single word of the textbook. Use skimming and scanning to find the keywords you're looking for. And at the same time, we know that there's not every answer in the textbook, because part of Cert 4 is your ability to research and identify key information. Okay, so we hope this webinar has been helpful for you. Thank you so much for choosing Success Training Academy to go through your Cert 4. And on the next webinar, or a separate webinar, we will be going through the projects for the design cluster. All right, this is the end of the webinar. Thank you very much.